Everyone in the cafe froze. The billionaire CEO had just slapped the shy waitress across the face and called her a thief. But then she whispered three words, and he completely froze. Her father's name. In that moment, everything changed. Morning came quietly to the Silverline Cafe, the tiny, warm-lit breakfast place tucked behind the glass towers of Redwood City. Its windows were fogged by steam, its tables crowded by office workers in cheap suits, its air rich with coffee and cinnamon. And moving softly between tables like a shadow was Leah Hart, the girl no one ever noticed unless they needed a refill. She liked it that way. At 22, Leah lived in the gentle grayscale of life. Soft-spoken, soft-footed, soft everything. She preferred listening to talking, observing to being seen. And she wore her hair in a simple ponytail as if hoping it might hide her entirely. Her coworkers often joked they forgot she was there until she appeared like a ghost, placing pastries on their trays. But Leah didn't mind. Silence was safer than attention. For 3 months, she had worked at the cafe under a fake last name, pretending to be just another girl living paycheck to paycheck. No one here knew her father. No one here expected her to be anything. No one compared her to him. No one demanded greatness. She could breathe here. But the peace was fragile, like a glass that had been bumped one too many times. As she wiped a table, her finger grazed a small bruise on her wrist, yesterday's reminder that some customers treated staff like furniture. She never complained, never reported it. Instead, she simply shrank further, hoping the world would leave her alone. She didn't know that today, everything would change. Across the city, the 57th floor of Black Ridge Corporations rang with the clipped footsteps of assistants sprinting to keep up with Alexander Black, the billionaire CEO whose temper was as legendary as his empire. Alex did not walk, he stormed. His jaw was sharp, his eyes colder than the chrome walls around him. His schedule was packed from dawn to midnight. Investors argued, boards demanded, competitors attacked. Every hour was a war zone, and Alex was always on guard. He trusted no one, especially after the betrayal that nearly cost him his company last year. A secretary jogged beside him. "Sir, your breakfast meeting with the Taiwan partners was moved to 10 a.m. due to a flight delay." "Fine. Send a car. I'll grab coffee on the way." "You want to go yourself?" "Yes. Is that a problem?" "No, sir. I'll inform security." "Don't." He didn't want guards, didn't want chatter, didn't want people fussing. He wanted silence. But silence never lasted long for men like him. 10 minutes later, a black SUV rolled up beside the Silverline Cafe. Alex stepped out in a charcoal suit, looking wildly out of place among commuters and students. People whispered. Some recognized him. Others just stared because he radiated the kind of presence that split the room in half. Leah, kneeling to pick up a fork, didn't notice him come in. His footsteps were decisive, impatient, sharp, the type that made the air shift. When she rose and turned, their worlds collided. She gasped softly, not because she was famous, but because he looked furious. Not the loud, explosive kind of anger, but the cold, restrained kind that made even confident people step back. Yet she stepped forward. "Good morning, sir. Table 4—" He cut her off. "Coffee, strong, black." "Oh, right away." She moved quickly, almost tripping over herself. Alex watched her hands shake as she poured his drink. Irritation pinched his brow. He didn't have patience for incompetence today. But underneath his annoyance, something strange tugged at him. a familiarity. Her face. Something about it. He ignored the feeling until things went terribly wrong. Leah brought the cup to his table, setting it down gently. Too gently, because her fingers slipped and the cup wobbled, spilling a splash onto the table. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, panicking. Alex's chair scraped loudly as he stood up. The cafe went silent. "Are you blind? Do you know how much this suit costs?" She flinched. I didn't mean—" "You never mean anything," he barked. "People like you, always making excuses." Her eyes stung. "I'll clean it. Please, just let me—" "Stop." His voice cut like a blade. He reached into his pocket and felt something missing. His wallet. The slim black leather case that held his cards, signature ring, and ID. Gone. His heartbeat spiked. "You," he pointed at her. "Where is my wallet?" She blinked, confused. I don't know." "You took it." "What? No, I didn't." But he wasn't listening. His past had taught him to assume the worst, and the worst had Leah's trembling hands and frightened eyes. "You think I won't call the police?" he snapped, stepping closer. "I didn't take anything," she whispered, voice cracking. "Liar!" Then, like a flash, he slapped her. The sound cracked through the cafe like a whip. Customers gasped. Leah stumbled back, hand to her cheek. Something broke inside her, something that had been fragile for years. For the first time in months, she felt anger, pure, sharp, unfiltered. Her voice trembled, not with fear, but with awakening strength. "Do you know who my father is?" Alex froze. Completely. Her father. The only man in the city Alex feared. The only man who could destroy him with a single phone call. And Leah, this shy, trembling girl, was his daughter? His stomach dropped. His breath caught. And for the first time in a very long time, Alexander Black felt fear.
The cafe was silent, so silent that Leah could hear her own heartbeat thudding against her ribs. Her cheek pulsed where his hand had struck her. Her fingers trembled, hovering near her skin, as if afraid to touch the hurt too closely. Everyone stared, customers frozen mid-bite, baristas stiff behind the counter, a child clinging to his mother's sleeve. And at the center of the stillness stood Alexander Black, breathing hard, eyes wide, not with rage, but with dawning horror. What did you say?" he whispered, his voice stripped of its usual steel. Leah swallowed, fighting the tremor in her throat as she repeated, clearer this time, "I said, do you know who my father is?" Her words sliced through the air like a quiet blade. Alex stepped back as if physically hit. Her father. Her father. His mind scrambled. He thought of boardrooms, political dinners, security briefings, everywhere that powerful, feared, untouchable man appeared. A man known for destroying enemies silently, cleanly, without leaving fingerprints. If this girl, this fragile, trembling girl, was his daughter, he had just slapped the wrong person. "Your father?" Alex repeated, cold sweat prickling his neck. Leah lifted her chin, barely, but enough to break her usual shrinking posture. "Yes, my father." She didn't say his name. She didn't need to. The weight of it filled the room anyway. People whispered. Someone grabbed their phone like they might film the aftermath. The barista looked like she might faint. Alex's vision sharpened. His breathing quickened. His stomach dropped like a plunging elevator. This couldn't be happening. He replayed the slap in his mind, the accusation, the venom in his voice. Then her face, small, bruised, trembling, yet suddenly carrying a legacy powerful enough to ruin him. "I didn't take anything," Leah whispered, voice hoarse with humiliation. "You had no right to accuse me." Her words were soft, but they stung him harder than any scream could have. He wanted to respond, but his throat constricted, because for the first time in years, he didn't know what to say. Leah's knees felt weak, but she forced herself to stay upright. She had spent years hiding, years ducking away from conflict, but something inside her had cracked open, something she couldn't stuff back down. All the times she had been ignored, stepped on, underestimated, all the times she had swallowed her voice, all the times she had wished she were braver, everything ignited at once. The customer's stares burned her skin, but she didn't back away. Her heart hammered, but she didn't fold. Not this time. Alex took a step toward her. She flinched. He stopped instantly, guilt washing over his features. "Leah." He said her name like he'd discovered it was fragile, something he wished he had handled differently. "I didn't know." "That doesn't give you the right to hurt people," she said quietly. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. But before he could finish, a voice from the counter spoke up. "Sir," the barista said nervously, holding something in the air. "You, left your wallet here when you ordered." The entire room gasped. Alex felt the blood drain from his face. The barista extended the black leather wallet toward him with two trembling fingers, as if it might explode. Leah stared at it, stunned. He had dropped it himself? Alex's lips parted. A faint tremor ran through his hands. He took the wallet slowly, the truth slicing into him. He had accused an innocent girl, slapped her, humiliated her, and she wasn't just any girl. "Leah," he whispered, voice frayed with shock and shame. But she turned her face away. Her cheek throbbed, hot, sore, and humiliating. Her chest twisted painfully. Tears burned at the back of her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of him. Not in front of strangers. She stepped back. "I need to go." He reached a hand out instinctively. "Wait. Don't touch me." The words were soft, trembling, but solid. A boundary. A wall. And it hit him like a punch. Alex stood frozen as she slipped past him toward the back room, head bowed, shoulders tight. Every step she took away from him deepened the guilt punching through his ribs. He turned toward the customers, dozens of accusing eyes. "Everyone, go back to what you were doing," he said weakly, sounding nothing like the man who had walked in earlier. But nobody moved. The shame was suffocating. He left money on the table, too much, embarrassingly too much, and hurried toward the back, stopping just outside the staff door. He raised a hand, hesitated, then knocked. "Leah?" His voice cracked. No answer. He swallowed hard. "Please, let me talk to you." Still nothing. Inside, Leah stood with her forehead pressed to the metal lockers, trying to breathe. Her cheek throbbed in sync with her pulse. Tears dripped silently on the floor. She hated that she was crying, hated that she still felt small, hated that he had the power to hurt her so easily. "Leah," Alex said again, voice low, almost pleading. "I'm sorry." She closed her eyes. She had been slapped before, by life, by expectations, by strangers who assumed she didn't matter. But this felt different. Because this time, she wasn't powerless. She had a name that could erase him, a father who could crush him, a truth that could flip his world inside out. But instead of using it, she felt tired. She wiped her tears. "I'm going home," she whispered. Alex stiffened on the other side of the door. "Wait, can I drive you?" "No." He swallowed hard. "Can I at least make sure you get home safely? I owe you." "You owe me nothing," she interrupted. "Just leave." Her voice was steady this time, unshaken, unmoving. Alex took a painful breath. This was the moment the story shifted, not just for her but for him. The slap was the explosion. Her words were the shockwave. But this silence, this heavy silence, this was the moment that would haunt him. 10 minutes later, Leah slipped out the back door, hoodie pulled up, eyes still red. She walked down the alley toward the street. Alex stood at the end of the alley, waiting, not forcing, not demanding, just standing. When she saw him, she froze. He didn't move toward her, didn't speak. He simply met her eyes, filled with guilt, regret, and something he didn't know he was capable of. Fear. Fear of what her father would do. Fear of losing control. Fear of himself. Fear of having crossed a line he could never uncross. Leah looked away and walked past him. He didn't follow, but he turned slowly, watching her leave with a heavy, sinking heart, because something inside him understood. This moment would change everything.
Maya returned to the staff hallway, hands trembling as she placed the empty tray against the wall. She exhaled sharply, but her lungs still felt tight, like the ocean had climbed onto her chest and refused to move. The whispers from other waiters came instantly. "Is it true? Did he hit you? We saw the slap, Maya. What happened? Are you okay?" She nodded mechanically, forcing a faint smile that fooled no one. Inside, she was splintering. She didn't like attention. She didn't like noise. And right now, everything was too loud, too bright, too much. "I'm fine," she whispered, even though she wasn't. But she couldn't fall apart. Not now. Her father was still on a video call somewhere, pacing, yelling, tearing down the walls of some corporate room standing thousands of miles away. And somewhere in those walls stood Damon, pale as chalk, holding her phone like it was a live grenade. Maya shut her eyes. "Dad, he hit me!" She had never used her father as a threat before, never wanted to. But the moment the slap landed, something in her snapped. The old version of her, the girl who swallowed pain, suddenly stood up and said, "No more." She didn't regret calling him, but she regretted what it meant. Her father would not let this go. And she, quiet, timid Maya, didn't want war. She just wanted respect, an apology, dignity. But dignity was a luxury in Damon Kingsley's world. He ran both hands through his hair, then leaned against the wall, then pushed off again. He couldn't stop moving. His expensive shoes clicked sharply against the tile. The slap replayed in his mind over and over. The sound, her flinch, the shock in her eyes. He felt sick. He wasn't the man who hit people. He wasn't the CEO who abused staff. But he had been becoming someone darker, harder, less human. His father's death, his mother's disappearance into alcohol, the betrayal of his mentor, the board breathing down his neck, the desperation not to lose his company. Pressure had a way of turning even good men into something jagged. And Maya, quiet, harmless Maya, had unknowingly walked into the storm he'd been carrying inside. He never should have touched her. Now, he was about to face her father, a man powerful enough to swallow Kingsley Enterprises whole. Damon's chest tightened. "Sir," his assistant Leo whispered, wide-eyed, "Mr. Hollis is demanding a live video call with the board, and he wants you present." Of course he did. Of course everything had to detonate today. Damon swallowed hard. "Start the call. I'll be there in a minute." But he didn't move, because Maya was still in the hallway, hugging herself like she was trying not to shatter. He didn't know how to fix the corporate explosion coming his way, but he knew
He had to fix this. He took one hesitant step toward her. She didn't turn. She didn't breathe. Her voice, normally soft, almost whisper-like, shook as she said, "Please don't come any closer." Damon stopped immediately. Silence fell between them, heavy, suffocating, complicated. I need to talk to you," he managed. "I don't want to talk to you," she said quietly, but firmly, surprising even herself. "I just want to finish my shift and go home." "Maya," Damon swallowed. "I'm sorry." She didn't turn. "You're not sorry for me. You're sorry for the consequences." Her words hit harder than he expected. Clean, precise, and painfully true. He took a slow breath. "You're right, but that doesn't mean I don't owe you more than an apology." "More?" she murmured bitterly. "Are you going to buy my silence? Pay me to disappear? Threaten my job?" Damon flinched. God, what had I become that she would even think that? "No," he said, voice cracking ever so slightly. "That's not what I want." "What do you want then?" She turned slowly, eyes glossy but blazing. "Because all I want is to feel safe at my job. That's it." Her voice cracked on the last word. Damon felt something fracture in his chest. I want to," he exhaled shakily, "make this right, whatever it takes." Maya shook her head. "You can't unslap someone, Damon." He closed his eyes. He knew that. God, he knew that. Leo burst into the hallway. "Sir, Mr. Hollis is demanding a live video call with the board, and he wants you present." Maya's heart plummeted. She knew her father was protective, but she didn't expect him to go nuclear. Damon stiffened. "Bring Maya," Leo added. "Mr. Hollis says she must be present." Maya's stomach twisted. She didn't want to worsen this. She didn't want drama or lawsuits or threats. This wasn't her father's fight. It was hers. "I'll go," she whispered softly, but only to tell him to calm down. Damon blinked at her in shock. You'd do that?" he whispered. She nodded, once. "I don't want you losing your company. I just want you to be better." The simplicity of her words undid something inside him. They walked toward the conference room, side by side, but oceans apart emotionally. The tension stretched between them tight as piano wire. Maya hugged her arms. Damon kept stealing glances. Neither spoke. Every step felt like walking toward a firing squad. But something else was happening too. Their fates were quietly intertwining, not by romance, not by choice, but by consequence. And consequences had a way of forcing two people to see each other, not as CEO and Waitress, not as powerful and powerless, but as two broken humans crashing into each other at the worst possible moment. Damon placed his hand on the door. "Maya," he murmured, voice low, "no matter what happens, you don't owe me anything. Not forgiveness, not comfort, not defense." Maya looked up at him, hurt, exhausted, trembling, but still gentle. "I'm not doing it for you," she whispered, "because I don't want hate to become who I am." Damon stared at her, stunned. She was stronger than he ever gave her credit for, stronger than he had ever been. He inhaled slowly. "Then let's face this together." She nodded, and for the first time, neither of them was running. Both stepped into the boardroom. The storm awaited.
The ride to the conference center was painfully silent. Maya sat stiffly on the leather-back seat of Damon's company car, her hands folded in her lap like she was trying to stop them from trembling. The city rolled past the window in streaks of gold and gray, tall buildings slicing the morning light. She blinked once, twice, as if she could will the tightness in her throat away. Damon sat across from her, pretending to review documents on his tablet. But he hadn't read a single line. His eyes kept drifting upward, stealing glances at her reflection in the window. Every time she swallowed, his chest tightened. He didn't know why. He didn't know how someone he had slapped, someone he had insulted, could still sit there with such quiet dignity. She wasn't glaring. She wasn't sulking. She wasn't demanding apologies. She was simply enduring. And for the first time in his life, Damon felt ashamed in a way meetings and boardrooms could never touch. "Your father is already in the main hall," he finally said, voice low. Maya nodded without looking at him. "I know." Her tone wasn't cold. It wasn't angry. It was worse. It was tired. Damon's throat tightened again. He placed the tablet aside. "Maya," he began, but she didn't turn. He tried again. "About last night." "Please don't." Her voice cracked softly. "Not now." And that was the knife. Quiet, gentle, but sharp. Damon leaned back, defeated by a woman who had every right to hate him, yet spoke to him without venom. Somehow that made it hurt more. The car stopped beneath the grand canopy of the conference center, a tall glass building that reflected the sky like a polished blade. Security lines ran long, cameras flashed, reporters hovered like hungry crows. Maya stepped out first. Damon followed, instinctively positioning himself between her and the press. She didn't notice, or maybe she did but chose not to acknowledge it. Inside, the atmosphere shifted. Business elites lined the marble halls. Assistants hurried with tablets. Every surface gleamed, every step echoed. But the moment Maya's father, Jonathan Hollis, billionaire investor, founder of the largest tech foundation in the country, stepped into view, the room changed. People straightened. Conversations quieted. Eyes followed him. Damon felt a jolt of tension ripple through him. He had met Jonathan Hollis once, years ago. He remembered two things: the man's sharp eyes and his reputation for destroying anyone who mistreated his daughter. Maya walked toward her father with soft, hesitant steps. "Dad," she whispered. Jonathan swept her into a hug so tight and protective, Damon felt the impact from across the hall. The older man pressed a kiss to the top of her head, then pulled back to inspect her face with silent worry, thumb brushing her cheekbone. "Are you all right?" he murmured. Maya nodded. "I'm fine." It was a lie, but a practiced one. Jonathan's gaze flicked up and landed on Damon. The air thickened. No one else existed in that moment. Not the crowd, not the cameras, not the investors. Just two men, one who hurt the woman he treasured, and one who regretted it more with every breath he took. Damon stepped forward. Damon braced himself. "I believe you and I have something to discuss," he said, slowly. Before Damon could answer, he turned to Maya. "You stay with my assistant. Damon and I will handle the presentation together." "Together?" Maya echoed softly. He smoothed her hair. "Yes, sweetheart. I know he hurt you, but this merger was your idea too, and you believed in it. Let's finish what you started. Then we'll address everything else." He shot Damon a look that promised, "We will talk, in private, thoroughly." But Maya seemed torn, her lips parting slightly. "Dad, please don't be harsh." He cupped her face. "No one hurts you without consequences." Damon flinched internally. Maya reached out, touching her father's arm. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "He apologized." Jonathan turned, stunned. "So fast?" "He apologized with his eyes," she corrected quietly. Damon's breath stalled. She had noticed. Jonathan exhaled sharply, then looked back at Damon. Really looked. Something shifted. Not forgiveness, not acceptance, but curiosity. "Come with me," he said. "Both of you." "Both?" Damon blinked. He expected to be dragged into a room alone, interrogated, shredded. But no,
Jonathan wanted Maya present. That meant he wanted honesty, transparency, accountability. The three walked together down a long hallway lined with glass offices. The silence between them was thick, but not hostile, more like a storm waiting for the first crack of thunder. Inside the private boardroom, Jonathan closed the door and faced Damon directly. "My daughter says you apologized," he said plainly. "But I only believe apologies spoken out loud." Maya's eyes widened. "Dad," Jonathan held up a hand, "if he means it, you'll have no problem saying it." Damon inhaled slowly. This was it, the one moment he feared, and the one moment he desperately needed. He turned toward Maya, not Jonathan, and spoke. "Maya," he said, voice low, steady, stripped bare. "I'm sorry." Her eyes flickered. He continued, "I'm sorry I accused you of stealing. I'm sorry I touched you in anger. I'm sorry I didn't see you. I was wrong." Jonathan's jaw tightened. Maya's breath trembled. Damon swallowed hard. "And I'm sorry it took fear for me to realize how fragile and human you are." Silence. Then Maya blinked hard, like tears threatened, but she wouldn't let them fall in front of two powerful CEOs. Jonathan looked between them. At last, he spoke. "That," he said slowly, "is an apology." But his tone remained firm. "However, what happens next is up to Maya." Damon turned to her. Her soft brown eyes rose to meet his. "Do you want him removed from this project?" Jonathan asked. The world held its breath. Maya did not look at her father. She looked only at Damon. And what she saw there, the remorse, the tension, the vulnerability of a man who had never bowed to anyone, made her inhale shakily. "No," she whispered. "I don't want him removed." Jonathan pursed his lips, but nodded. "Then he stays." A strange quiet settled. Not peace, not comfort, but something delicate, something shifting. Maya stepped toward the table, placing her notes down with trembling hands. Damon moved to help instinctively, then stopped himself, unsure if he was allowed. She glanced at him. Just one glance. Small, soft, quick. But it carried meaning. A permission. A fragile acceptance. A temporary truce. Forced proximity begun. Not through accident, not through circumstance, through choice. Together, they stepped to the front of the boardroom, standing side by side for the first time, not waitress and CEO, not alleged thief and accuser, but two people bound by tension, apology, and something neither of them dared to name. The merger presentation began, and with every slide, every shared look, every breath that echoed between them, the possibility of forgiveness began its slow, impossible bloom. If you're still watching, take a second to like this video, drop a comment about how you're feeling right now, and make sure you subscribe.
For a brief moment, it felt like the room itself was learning to breathe again. The presentation moved smoothly, slides shifting, figures aligning, projections glowing across the polished boardroom wall. Maya spoke softly but confidently. Damon grounded each point with sharp precision. Even Jonathan Hollis, who had entered the room radiating protective fury, was slowly easing into a thoughtful focus. It should have been a turning point, a fragile beginning, a chance for healing. But the universe rarely lets wounds close without reopening them first. 10 minutes before the end of the presentation, the boardroom door burst open. Everyone turned. It was Clara Vance, Damon's ex-fiancée, head of PR, master manipulator in stilettos sharp enough to cut steel. Her eyes gleamed with something poisonous the moment they landed on Maya, standing beside Damon. "Sorry to interrupt," Clara said with a sugar-coated smile that fooled no one. "But this simply cannot wait." Jonathan narrowed his gaze.
This is a private meeting." Clara stepped inside anyway, heels stabbing the floor. "It concerns Damon and your daughter." Damon stiffened. Maya's blood ran cold. Clara tossed a folder onto the table, papers spilling like a dropped deck of cards. "In case you're all unaware, your sweet little waitress here was fired just last week for stealing cash from her cafe register." The room froze. The words slammed into Damon like a punch to the chest. Maya's knees nearly buckled. Jonathan's eyes widened, shock morphing into something darker. "That's enough, Clara," Damon snapped, stepping forward. Anger erupted in him so fast it burned through his composure. "You don't belong in this meeting." "Oh, I belong, because this," she waved at Maya like she was a stain on the glass floor, "is a liability. If she's going to stand beside our CEO in a merger this big, investors deserve to know exactly who she is." Maya's breathing quickened. Her palms trembled at her sides. She whispered, "I didn't steal anything." Clara smirked. "Oh, sweetheart, they all say that." The venom in her voice broke something inside Maya. A childhood of being overlooked, a lifetime of being spoken over, a world that never believed the quiet girl. Jonathan turned slowly toward his daughter. "Maya, is this true?" His voice wasn't angry. It was devastated, and that hurt more. Maya's eyes filled, her throat closing. She tried to speak, but nothing came out. She looked so small, so painfully human, in that polished boardroom of titans. Damon stepped forward instantly. "It's a lie," he said firmly. "Maya never stole anything. Clara is doing this because—" "Because what?" Clara cut in sharply. "Because you dumped me? Because you humiliated me in front of the board last quarter? Or," she tilted her head with a cruel smile, "because you're developing a soft spot for her?" Silence. Then a tremor ran through the room. Maya's breath caught. Jonathan's brow arched. Damon's jaw locked. Clara leaned closer to Maya, smiling like it was entertainment. "Tell them, little mouse. Tell them the truth. Did you steal? Or were you just fired because you're incompetent?" Maya backed away, her voice barely a whisper. I didn't—" "Maya!" Jonathan's voice hardened, not at her, but in fear. "Tell me, please." Her eyes glistened. The humiliation, the pressure, the knives disguised as questions, everything crashed on her at once. And because trauma has a cruel timing, she remembered the night she was fired, remembered the owner's screams, remembered trying to explain, trying to breathe, trying to stay calm, but no one listened, just like now. Her knees wobbled. Damon reached out instinctively. "Maya!" "Don't touch her." Jonathan lifted a hand. "Let her go," he said softly. Clara smirked in satisfied triumph. Damon's fists clenched so tightly, his nails dug into his palms. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't an argument. This was a breaking. The bond they were building, fragile, slow, delicate, fractured under the weight of lies, shame, and a lifetime of not being believed. Maya didn't stop running until she was out of the building, the city noise swallowing her sobs. Damon watched the door swing close behind her, and for the first time in years, he felt completely, utterly powerless.
Maya didn't stop running until the wind felt colder than her thoughts. She burst through the revolving doors of the conference center and stumbled onto the stone steps outside. Cars honked, crowds moved, and the world went on as if her heart hadn't just cracked open in front of the two people whose opinions mattered most. She pressed a hand to her chest, gasping for breath that refused to come. Clara's words echoed. Her father's hesitation echoed louder. And worst of all, the old memories echoed the loudest. Disbelief, accusations, shame she never earned. "I didn't steal," Maya whispered to herself, voice trembling. "Why is that never enough?" A taxi driver shouted nearby. A group of students laughed across the street. Somewhere, a dog barked. Life went on, unmoved, unaware. But inside her, everything was shaking. She sank onto the cold edge of a fountain, tears silently rolling down her cheeks, tears she'd learned to hide since childhood, tears she thought she'd grown out of. She had been brave this morning, proud, ready to face the world. And now she felt like a child again, alone, confused, trying to understand why the truth was always so fragile in her hands. She whispered once more, "I didn't steal." But the world didn't answer. Only the wind did, soft and indifferent, until footsteps approached, slow, hesitant, but steady. She didn't look up. She didn't need to. She already knew the rhythm of that walk. Damon. He stood a few feet away, unsure if he was allowed to come closer, unsure if he had the right. The man who owns skyscrapers suddenly had no idea how to approach one trembling girl. "Maya," he said softly. She didn't lift her head. She kept staring at her shoes, at the wet drops hitting them. He exhaled shakily. "I shouldn't have let her speak to you like that." Nothing. He tried again, voice lower. "I shouldn't have let your father question you alone." Still nothing. He swallowed. "I shouldn't have ever doubted you." Her breath hitched, but she didn't speak. Damon looked away, running his hand through his hair, something he only did when he felt helpless. "You know, when Clara barged in, everything inside me snapped, not just because she attacked you, because she did it in public, without mercy. And he paused, voice thickening. "I froze. I let your shame happen all over again." Maya shut her eyes. A tear slipped down. Gently, slowly, Damon stepped closer. "Maya, look at me." She stayed still. "Maya," he whispered, and her name cracked in his throat. "Please." Finally, painfully, she lifted her eyes. Those soft brown eyes, red, wet, broken around the edges, hit him like a blow because they weren't asking for salvation. They were asking why. Why he let this happen. Why he didn't protect her. Why the world never believed quiet people. Damon inhaled deeply. "You told your father you were ashamed, but you weren't ashamed of lying. You were ashamed of being doubted again." Her lips trembled. "I've been doubted my whole life. No matter what I say, someone always finds a reason not to trust me." He stepped even closer. "I trust you," Damon said firmly. But Maya shook her head. "No, you don't. Not really. If you did, you wouldn't have looked at my father before looking at me." The truth hit him hard. She was right. When Clara attacked, when Jonathan questioned, Damon's instinct had been to glance at Maya's father for confirmation, for permission to defend her. Not at Maya. Not at the woman crushed under the weight of old wounds. He had looked at the man who already had power, not the girl who needed support. And Damon felt sick. "I'm sorry," he said again, but this time not as a CEO, not as a man in control, not as someone who thought apologies were just words. This time, he said it like a man kneeling emotionally. "Maya, I am sorry I didn't choose you first." Her chest tightened painfully. The wind blew softly between them. City noise faded. For a moment, it felt like they were alone in a world too big for delicate hearts. Maya wiped a tear from her cheek. "I don't need you to fight my battles. I need you to stand beside me while I fight them." "I can do that. I want to do that." "But will you still want to?" she asked, voice trembling. "When people whisper? When Clara spreads more lies? When my father questions me again?" Damon didn't hesitate. Yes. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. But it was the most honest thing he had said in years. Maya's breath softened. Not healed, not whole, but steadier. Damon lowered himself slowly to sit beside her on the fountain edge, close enough to offer warmth,
far enough not to overwhelm her. For a long moment they said nothing. Then Maya whispered, "I didn't steal." He turned her gently. "I know. And I need you to believe that without proof." "I do. And I need you," her voice cracked, "to trust me even when it makes no sense." "I will." Silence again. This time not painful, not sharp, but heavy in a different way. The kind of silence where a choice is made, softly, quietly, but permanently. Maya exhaled. "Okay," she whispered. "Then I'll try again." Damon closed his eyes briefly, relief flooding through him. They weren't healed, they weren't fixed, but they had chosen something harder and braver than forgiveness. They had chosen each other, even if they didn't know what that meant yet.
The city was quiet now, the hum of traffic softened by the early evening haze. Maya stood at the edge of the rooftop terrace, the wind tugging at her hair, the skyline reflecting 1,000 lights across glass towers. Her fingers clutched her phone, still warm from Damon's last text. "I'll be there." She exhaled, the weight of the last 24 hours pressing down like a storm, but calmer now. She could finally think, could finally breathe, could finally feel that fragile thread of hope. And then she heard the footsteps behind her. Damon. He didn't say a word. He simply stood a few feet away, letting the wind fill the silence between them, giving her space, but making his presence undeniable. Every step, every breath, every heartbeat had been rehearsed 1,000 times in his mind, and yet now it all felt raw, vulnerable, alive. "Are you mad at me?" he finally asked, voice low. Maya turned slowly, meeting his gaze. Her eyes reflected the city lights, shimmering with unshed tears. "I don't know if I should be," she admitted. You slapped me, Damon, called me a thief, and yet—" "And yet?" he prompted gently. Her lips trembled. She swallowed. You apologized. You admitted the truth. You protected me. And you didn't run." Damon's chest tightened. "I didn't run, Maya. I never wanted to." Her gaze softened, and for the first time in hours, maybe even days, she allowed herself to relax just slightly. The tension that had gripped her chest like iron began to ease. He took a careful step closer. "I can't erase what happened," he said quietly. "I can't take back the words, the slap, the fear, but I can be here, from now on, if you'll let me." Slowly, she reached out, her fingers brushing against his hand, a tentative connection, a fragile trust. I'm scared," she whispered, "but I can't keep running from this." "You don't have to. Not from me, not from yourself." For a long moment, they just stood there, the city lights flickering like distant stars and the breeze carrying the quiet hum of life below. And in that silence, something shifted. Not everything was fixed, not all scars were gone, but something new had begun. Maya's phone buzzed in her pocket, a message from her father. "I know. I believe you. He does too. Choose carefully." She smiled faintly, a small, trembling smile. "He believes me," she said. Damon nodded. And then she looked up at him fully this time, eyes locking. A question passed silently between them. "Can we really start again?" Damon reached out, gently taking her hand in both of his. He said, "We can try, together." Maya exhaled, letting the tension in her shoulders finally release. "Together," she echoed. The memory of the boardroom, the slap, the fear, the shame, it was still there, but now it felt like a lesson rather than a chain. She realized that their connection wasn't about anger or shame. It was about truth, about confronting vulnerability, about courage in the face of judgment. And they had survived it. The wind lifted slightly, tugging at her hair. Damon brushed a loose strand from her face, his fingers grazing her cheek gently. She leaned into the touch, not hiding, not apologizing.
For the first time she felt seen, not as a timid waitress, not as a little girl to be protected, but as herself. The city below them glowed, indifferent yet perfect, and the world felt a little less cold. "I don't know what comes next," Maya whispered. Damon smiled softly, leaning closer. He said, "We'll figure it out, step by step. No running, no hiding, just this." He gestured between them, at the connection they had forged through chaos, confrontation, apology, and confession. And Maya nodded. For the first time in a long time, hope replaced fear. They stood there, hand in hand, letting the quiet of the evening wash over them. Their scars were still there, their doubts lingering, but now there was trust. Now there was a choice. And for the first time, they were walking into the future, not as fractured strangers, but as two people bound by something real. The city lights reflected in their eyes like stars, only now, instead of shock and pain, it reflected resilience, choice, forgiveness, and the fragile, beautiful promise of something new. And in that moment, they both understood. The hardest battles aren't the ones we fight in public. They're the ones we fight in our hearts. And sometimes, winning means simply standing together.